South Bend, Indiana, a city where the St. Joseph River meanders lazily, and the University of Notre Dame's Fighting Irish football team is the talk of the town. It's where I grew up and where I met Corey and Austin. We were the three musketeers of mischief, inseparable since the days of scraped knees and crayon drawings. Every October, the carnival rolled into town, an array of lights, sounds, and smells that beckoned us like moths to a flame. Ferris wheels, shooting galleries, and cotton candy scent filled the air. But what really caught our eye that year was the ride through the haunted house. We'd already squandered half our allowances on rigged games, so we ambled over to the ticket booth. The guy running it wore a rubber Halloween mask and growled in his best spooky voice, ready to be scared out of your wits. Corey, ever the brave one, just scoffed. "Yeah, dude, hit us." This wasn't your run-of-the-mill cardboard cutout kind of deal. The facade was a towering Gothic structure with fake stone walls that looked like they'd been lifted straight out of a Transylvanian horror flick. Cobwebs draped over the windows, and the flickering lights made it look like the place was alive. A sign above the entrance read, "The Abyss," in letters that seemed to ooze blood. Once inside, the cart creaked along a rusty track, guiding you through a maze of rooms that were each more elaborate than the last. The first room was a graveyard with tombstones that jutted out of a foggy floor. Skeletal hands would suddenly reach up as if trying to pull you into the underworld. The walls were adorned with murals of twisted trees and a moon that seemed to follow you with its hollow gaze. The next room was a mad scientist's lab. Beakers bubbled with neon liquids, and a Frankenstein-like creature twitched on an operating table, its eyes snapping open as you passed by. Electrical arcs danced between coils, filling the room with a static buzz that made your hair stand on end. Then came the forest of hanging corpses. Mannequins wrapped in tattered clothes dangled from nooses. They were so lifelike that you couldn't shake the feeling they were watching you, their eyes hidden in the shadows. Just when you thought you were through, one would lunge at you, propelled by some hidden mechanism, its fingers inches from your face. The final room was a satanic chapel with an altar and inverted crosses. Hooded figures chanted in a language you couldn't understand but felt in your bones. As you passed the altar, the room plunged into darkness, and you felt someone, brush past you. When the lights flickered back on, the hooded figures were gone, but the feeling that you weren't alone lingered. Austin and I were impressed, but Corey, he was having none of it. So unimpressed that he marched right back to the ticket booth and demanded a refund. The guy listened, then leaned in, his voice dropping to a sinister whisper. "If you really want to see something scary in there, come back at 10 p.m. You'll get your money back if you're still not scared shitless." I didn't have a problem with the ride, but Corey insisted. Somehow, Corey convinced us that if we returned after 10 p.m., we'd get the adult version. Of course, being 15-year-old kids who couldn't get into an R-rated movie, this sounded pretty good. By 10 p.m., the carnival was winding down, rides were closing, and the crowd had thinned. The haunted house looked deserted. Had this carny guy duped us? Corey was ready to raise hell, but there he was, sitting on the entrance stairs. The carny commented about being surprised we'd showed up, figuring we were too chicken for the midnight showing, as he called it. We just laughed, given that it was just a few minutes past 10 p.m. He then said something about not leaving any paying visitors unhappy, and it was something so scary that very few who ventured into the midnight showing could handle it without losing their minds. He said it in such a sheer terrifying and sinister way that it honestly was freaking me out. Corey reminded the dude of his refund condition. The guy warned us that what lay ahead was so terrifying it had driven people mad. Austin bailed, of course. I hesitated, torn between Corey's mockery and my gut feeling. Finally, I chose to stay with Austin. "If it's that great, I'll go after you," I told Corey. He shot me a look of disdain but climbed into the cart. As it disappeared into the darkness, I saw a flicker of doubt cross his face, but it was too late to turn back. The carnival sounds had died down. The haunted house stood eerily silent. There wasn't any noise or anything, unlike earlier when you could hear the evil laughs, the electric thunderbolts, and the recorded shrieks. This was just dead silence, and not in a good way. Maybe like 10 or 15 minutes had gone by, and the cart carrying Corey still hadn't reappeared. When we went through earlier, it took like 5 minutes, tops. We looked over at the carny, but he was gone. Neither Austin nor I remember seeing him disappear. Just as I was about to investigate, the cart emerged. Corey was in it, looking Off. His face was ashen, his eyes vacant. "What happened?" I pressed. "Never go in there," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. Corey was definitely rattled by something. Even in the moonlight, he looked pale and visibly shaken, with a vacant expression on his face, shocked by whatever he had seen. Physically, he looked unharmed, but damage doesn't have to be the physical kind. We pestered him all the way home, but he clammed up. "Never go in there," was all he said. We walked quietly for a long while before Austin broke the silence. "Come on, man, what happened?" "Something that doesn't make sense," Corey finally mumbled. He never talked about it ever again. I pressed, but he refused to talk about it. As hard as it is to believe, in the weeks, months, and eventually years that followed, that was all we ever got out of Corey. His personality changed after that. He became distant, aloof. Whatever happened that night was the beginning of the end of our friendship, and we slowly began to drift apart, losing touch completely after high school. All that's left is the one piece of advice from Corey. If a carnival stops by your town and the abyss beckons, never ever go in there. Have you ever had one of those nights that starts off like a scene from a teen movie, but ends up feeling like you've stumbled into a Stephen King novel? Yeah, that was Halloween, the year I turned 23. Chuck, my buddy who's always up for a good time, but has the fashion sense of a blind pirate, invited us to this Halloween bash. He showed up at my place in camo pants that were 2 sizes too small and a bandana tied Rambo style around his forehead. "Dude, you look like Rambo's less fortunate cousin," I laughed. Phil, on the other hand, nailed his Han Solo look down to the blaster. But Neil? Man, Neil was the show stealer. He donned a Michael Myers getup, complete with an authentic-looking mask, an old pair of mechanic's overalls, and a plastic butcher knife that looked eerily real. We gathered at my place before the party. We were buzzing from a couple of beers, feeling invincible or stupid. You know how it is. The party was just 3 blocks away, so we decided to walk. This gave us a chance to soak in the atmosphere and check out the trick-or-treaters in their cutesy costumes. Everything felt electric, like the universe was setting us up for an epic night. As we approached, the house loomed like a beacon of chaos. The thumping bass of the music, the laughter, the flickering Halloween lights. The place was packed, a sea of Marvel heroes, witches, and monsters. The moment we stepped inside, it was like crossing the threshold into the Twilight Zone. The air was thick with a fog churned out by a smoke machine, giving the whole place a ghostly, otherworldly vibe. Strobe lights flashed in sync with the pounding bass, casting creepy shadows that danced across the walls. It was as if the house itself had come alive, its pulse beating in sync with the music. A live DJ was perched on a makeshift stage, lost in his own world, hands flying across the turntables as he conjured up a spellbinding mix of electronic beats and haunting melodies. The crowd was a swirling kaleidoscope of costumes, vampires mingling with superheroes, ghosts laughing with zombies. A guy dressed as Doctor Strange was levitating a beer can with a string, and a girl in a Maleficent costume had horns that actually glowed. A faux cauldron bubbled over with dry ice in one corner while a spread of Halloween-themed treats beckoned. Think cookies, shaped like severed fingers, a punch bowl resembling a witch's brew, and candy corn overflowing from hollowed-out pumpkins. But what really amped up the surreal atmosphere was the intricate decorations. Cobwebs stretched across every available surface, and animatronic spiders occasionally dropped from the ceiling, causing delighted shrieks. A life-size skeleton sat in an armchair, holding a sign that read, "Rest in Party." Even the bathroom was transformed into a mini haunted house, complete with motion-activated ghostly whispers. It was intoxicating, disorienting, and utterly mesmerizing. The kind of party that makes you forget about the world outside, luring you deeper into its spell. And maybe, just maybe, that was the whole point. Because in a setting like this, anyone, or anything, could blend right in. Cue the party crashers, the cops, noise complaint, party over. We spilled out onto the front yard, a motley crew of deflated superheroes and monsters. Neil was quieter than usual, but hey, alcohol does that to some people. On the walk back to my place, we decided to make a pit stop at the corner convenience store. Chuck went in, and we loitered outside, the night suddenly feeling colder. That's when I noticed it. Neil's knife. It looked different, sharper, real. My heart started pounding like a drum at a death metal concert. Not cool, I thought, as I slowly reached out to grab it, thinking he'd swiped it at the party. A good way to get busted by the cops or worse. As my mind was trying to make sense of all this, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Neil calling. Wait, what? My first thought was Neil had lost his phone or something, and the person who found it was simply calling the last number he dialed. I answered, and Neil's voice crackled through, asking where we were. He'd passed out in an upstairs bedroom and just woke up. My eyes darted to the guy next to me. Realization dawned on me as I noticed the boots. Neil wore black tennis shoes, and the guy was wearing gloves. Neil wasn't wearing any. This wasn't Neil. This was a stranger in a Mike Myers mask. Adrenaline kicked in. I pointed the knife back at him, my voice a shaky scream. "Who the hell are you?" My friends were confused, their faces a mix of concern and disbelief, but as they looked closer, realization dawned. This wasn't Neil. This was someone else. Someone who had been walking with us, laughing with us, someone with a very real butcher knife. The guy bolts, vanishing into the night like a ghost. We gave chase, but he was swallowed by the darkness. Looking back, maybe it's a good thing we lost him. What would we have done if we caught him? We made it back to my place, but that lingering dread, it stayed long after the costumes were off, and the night had faded into a blurry memory. It was a few years back, Halloween night, and my friends and I were looking to have some spooky fun. We were all in our early 20s, too old for trick or treating, but not too old for a good old-fashioned haunted house. My friend Ben had heard about this place called Cursed Manor. He said they put on a really good, high-quality, scary house, so we were all pretty stoked. Rather than the typical guided tour of creepy rooms, this place operated like one of those escape room attractions in which we moved from room to room only after solving a clue and finding a key. We started in the living room, a massive coffin occupying center stage, spiderwebs blanketed every nook and cranny. The furniture was old, antique-looking, with dust covering everything and bloodstains on the creaky wooden floors. The dining room was next, with dim lanterns hooked to the walls, casting distorted shadows across the walls. Actors in ghastly costumes leaped out from the shadows that damn near got us every time. The house was designed like a twisted maze, filled with false doors and deceptive turns. We spent a lot of time going in circles, trying to find the right path to the next haunted room. Eventually, we stumbled upon the dreaded basement door, the final destination in this maze of horror. I had to admit I was a little freaked out about going down there. The stairs led down to an abyss of pitch-black darkness. We'd been warned to leave our cell phones behind, so there was no light for us. It was either brave the unknown or chicken out. So, of course, down we went. Each step on that rickety staircase shrieked like nails on a chalkboard. We nervously chuckled, telling each other how freaked out we were. I had my hands out in front of me, as if I was searching for something in the complete darkness. Then I bumped into someone. "Who's that?" I called, expecting to hear one of my friends' voices. Silence. Then, a hand clamped down on my shoulder. I bolted, my screams ricocheting off the cold walls as I could hear my friends laughing. Something was disturbing about being in that pitch-black basement, knowing some stranger was in there with us. Miraculously, one of my friends found a key on a decrepit desk in a corner. We all ran back upstairs into the light, panting and wide-eyed, and exited that eerie place. A bin sat outside the exit door, a polite sign reading, "Drop keys here, please." The staff would then collect the keys and return them to the basement for the next wretched souls. As my friends and I were laughing and kidding each other about how scary the haunted house was, an exit door creaked open. Out stepped a towering figure dressed in a black robe with a scarecrow mask covering his face. I assumed this was one of the staff members for the attraction. We were about halfway to Pete's place when I glanced over my shoulder and noticed the guy in the costume seemed to be following us. One of my friends yelled back to him that we drop the key in the bin if that's what you want. There was no response. The dude just kept coming. We decided to have a little fun at the next intersection and started running. What was crazy is so did the guy in the scarecrow mask. When we stopped, so did he. Despite our laughs, we all started getting slightly freaked out by this. Our nervous laughs turned into genuine concern when we reached Pete's block. Should we actually lead this freak right to Pete's door? I mean, the guy had tailed us for 5 damn blocks. If this was some sort of joke, it was going on way too long. Scarecrow was about 2 houses behind us when we gave him a one-finger wave and sprinted through the gate to Pete's backyard. We heard the gate creak open as he was fumbling with the key in the back door. In the dim light, we turned just in time to see Scarecrow start charging towards us. We burst through his back door as Pete starts yelling for his dad. His dad bolts into the kitchen as we huddle around the door, peeking through the rear window. He flips the light switch for the backyard, and standing there directly in the middle is Scarecrow. He's just standing there, staring at us without saying a word. Pete's dad yells at the guy that he's calling the police. He turns to grab his phone, and when we look back outside, Scarecrow is gone. We didn't bother calling the cops that night, but we did contact the haunted house to report the incident. They informed us they had no record of an employee wearing a Scarecrow mask,